Most preppers spend thousands on stockpiles, bunkers, and gear, but when an EMP strikes, none of that matters if you can't move. Your bug-out plan collapses the second your vehicle becomes a 4,000-pound paperweight on the side of the road. While everyone's debating which freeze-dried meals taste better or which rifle holds more rounds, the real question nobody's asking is this. When the grid dies and every modern car on the highway turns into a dead metal coffin, what are you driving? Here's the brutal truth that most survival channels won't tell you, because they're too busy selling you tactical flashlights and paracord bracelets. An electromagnetic pulse doesn't care about your brand loyalty, your monthly payment plan, or how many cup holders your SUV has. It cares about one thing: electronics. The more computer chips running your engine, transmission, fuel injection, and ignition, the more vulnerable you are. One burst of electromagnetic energy from a high-altitude nuclear detonation or a solar flare, and every circuit board in modern vehicles gets fried instantly. No warning, no second chance, just silence. And before you think this is some far-fetched doomsday fantasy, understand that multiple nations currently possess EMP weapons, and our sun has thrown Carrington-level events at Earth before. In 1859, telegraph systems across Europe and North America burst into flames from a solar storm. If that happened today, we're talking about a grid-down scenario lasting months, maybe years. Your shiny new truck with lane assist, backup cameras, and touchscreen everything, it's done. But there are vehicles, specific makes and models flying under the radar, that can survive what's coming. 3 of them cost less than $40,000, and chances are, you've never even considered them. If you're serious about surviving when everything electronic dies, then you need to hear this. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to share isn't found in mainstream prepper advice, and most people won't figure it out until it's too late. Hit that like button if you're ready to think beyond the basics, and let's get into the vehicles that could save your life when the lights go out for good. The first vehicle preppers consistently overlook is the 1985 to 1995 Toyota Land Cruiser FJ62 and FJ80 series. These rigs aren't just tough, they're nearly indestructible, and here's why they matter in an EMP scenario. The FJ62, produced from 1985 to 1990, came equipped with a carburetor on early models and minimal electronic fuel injection on later ones. The FJ80, which ran from 1991 to 1997, introduced more electronics, but the key is finding earlier production years, specifically 1991 to 1995 models, before Toyota went heavy on computerized systems. These Land Cruisers were built for the Australian outback, African deserts, and South American jungles, places where you can't just call a tow truck when something breaks. The inline-six engine, either the 3F or the 1FZ-FE depending on the year, is legendary for reliability. We're talking about engines that routinely hit 300,000 miles without major overhauls. But reliability isn't the same as EMP resistance, so let's talk specifics. The earlier FJ62 models with carburetors have almost zero vulnerable electronics. A carburetor is purely mechanical. It mixes air and fuel without needing a computer to tell it what to do. If you can find an FJ62 with a carburetor and a manual transmission, you've got a vehicle that will start after an EMP, as long as the alternator and basic ignition components survive, which they likely will because they're older, simpler technology with minimal solid-state electronics. Even the later fuel-injected models in the FJ80 series use relatively simple electronic fuel injection compared to modern vehicles. You're looking at basic engine control units without the complex network of sensors, modules, and computers that make newer cars so vulnerable. The ignition system is straightforward, and with some spare parts like an ignition coil, distributor cap, and rotor, you can keep this thing running indefinitely. Parts availability is another massive advantage. Because these Land Cruisers were sold worldwide and built in huge numbers, you can still find parts, and many components are interchangeable across different years and models. Now let's talk about finding one under $40,000. It's possible, but you need to know where to look. The FJ62 models, especially those in decent condition, typically run between $15,000 and $25,000, depending on mileage and rust. The FJ80 series costs slightly more, usually between $20,000 and $35,000 for a clean example. The sweet spot is finding a high-mileage FJ80 from the early 90s that's been maintained but not restored. You're not buying a show truck, you're buying a survival platform. Surface rust doesn't matter as much as mechanical integrity. Check the frame for serious rot, make sure the engine doesn't burn oil excessively, and verify the transmission shifts smoothly. Everything else can be fixed or lived with. The tactical advantage of the Land Cruiser goes beyond EMP resistance. These vehicles have massive aftermarket support for overlanding and expedition setups. You can add roof racks, auxiliary fuel tanks, heavy-duty bumpers, winches, and suspension upgrades without breaking the bank. The four-wheel drive system is robust and reliable, giving you genuine off-road capability when paved roads become impassable or too dangerous to use. Ground clearance is solid, approach and departure angles are workable, and the vehicle's weight distribution makes it stable on rough terrain. But here's what most preppers miss when they think about bug-out vehicles. It's not just about surviving the initial EMP. It's about what happens in the weeks and months after. You need a vehicle that you can repair in the field with basic tools, that doesn't require specialized diagnostic equipment or proprietary software to troubleshoot. The Land Cruiser's simplicity is its greatest strength. You can diagnose problems by sound, smell, and observation. You can swap parts without a computer telling the vehicle to reject them. This is old-school mechanical engineering at its finest, and in a grid-down world, old school is what keeps you moving. The second vehicle that deserves your attention is the 1987 to 1995 Jeep Wrangler YJ. Before you roll your eyes and think every prepper already knows about Jeeps, hear me out, because most people are buying the wrong models. The YJ generation, the one with the square headlights that Jeep purists love to hate, is actually the sweet spot for EMP resistance and affordability. These Wranglers came with two engine options that matter: the 2.5-liter four-cylinder and the 4.0-liter inline-six. The four-cylinder is underpowered and struggles with highway speeds, so ignore it. The 4.0-liter six is what you want, and here's why it's EMP resistant. From 1987 to 1990, the YJ used a carburetor and a simple distributor ignition system. Zero computers controlling the engine. After 1991, Jeep switched to electronic fuel injection, but it's a primitive system by today's standards. The engine control unit is basic, and the number of sensors is minimal. Compared to a modern Wrangler JL with dozens of modules controlling everything from throttle response to stability control, the YJ is basically analog. The transmission options include a 5-speed manual and a 3-speed automatic. Obviously, the manual is preferable because it's purely mechanical and removes another potential point of electronic failure. The YJ's simplicity extends to every system. The four-wheel drive transfer case is manually engaged with a floor-mounted lever, no electronic buttons or automatic engagement that can fail. The suspension is leaf springs front and rear, which is crude and gives a rough ride, but it's nearly impossible to break and easy to repair. You can replace a leaf spring on the side of the road with basic hand tools. The steering is recirculating ball, no electronic power steering assist to worry about. These are features that sound primitive when you're comparing spec sheets at a dealership, but when society collapses and you're 200 miles from your retreat with no access to a mechanic, primitive becomes priceless. Finding a YJ under $40,000 is easier than finding a Land Cruiser because there are simply more of them. A decent running YJ with the 4.0-liter engine typically costs between $8,000 and $20,000, depending on condition and modifications. The earlier models with carburetors are harder to find, but usually cheaper, because fewer people want them. This is your opportunity. While everyone's chasing the fuel-injected models thinking they're more reliable, you can snag a carburetor model that's actually more EMP-resistant and save money in the process. The aftermarket for YJs is enormous. You can build these Jeeps into legitimate off-road machines without spending a fortune. Larger tires, lift kits, locking differentials, skid plates, and armor are all readily available. Parts interchangeability with other Jeep models, especially the Cherokee XJ, which used the same 4.0-liter engine, means you can stockpile spare parts cheaply. Junkyards are full of XJs, and their engines, transmissions, and axles bolt right into YJs with minimal modification. But here's the real advantage that preppers overlook with the YJ. It's small and maneuverable. When you're navigating through abandoned vehicles on highways, squeezing through forest trails, or trying to stay off main roads entirely, A compact wheelbase matters. The YJ is over a foot shorter than a full-size pickup and several feet shorter than a Land Cruiser. That difference lets you take routes that larger vehicles can't, and in a bug-out scenario, having options is survival. The third vehicle almost nobody talks about is the 1973 to 1979 Ford F-Series pickup, specifically the F-150 and F-250 models. These trucks predate electronic fuel injection entirely, running purely on carburetors and mechanical systems. The engines available during this period include the 300 cubic inch inline six, the 351 Windsor V8, and the 400 V8. The 300 inline six is legendary for durability and fuel efficiency, routinely reaching 300,000 miles with basic maintenance. The 351 Windsor offers more power for towing and hauling while still being relatively simple and reliable. These Ford trucks have zero electronic engine management. The ignition system is points or electronic ignition, both of which are simple enough to survive an EMP or be quickly repaired with spare parts. The carburetor is a mechanical device that will continue functioning regardless of electromagnetic interference. The transmission options include a 3-speed or 4-speed manual, both fully mechanical, and a C6 3-speed automatic that uses hydraulic controls instead of electronic solenoids. Even the automatic transmission in these trucks is EMP-resistant because it doesn't rely on computers. What makes these F-Series trucks especially valuable is their utility. You're not just getting transportation, you're getting a work platform. The bed can haul supplies, water, fuel, equipment, and people. Towing capacity is substantial, meaning you can pull a trailer loaded with everything you couldn't fit in the truck. In a long-term survival situation, being able to move bulk goods and materials is critical. You can't rebuild or relocate with just a backpack. The frame and suspension on these trucks are overbuilt by modern standards. Steel frames that can take abuse and keep going. Leaf spring suspension front and rear on the F-250 models, which is agricultural-grade tough. These trucks were designed for ranchers, farmers, and construction workers who needed something that wouldn't quit. And that engineering philosophy is exactly what you need in a grid-down scenario. Finding one under $40,000 is not only possible, it's likely you'll spend far less. Clean examples of 1973 to 1979 F-Series trucks typically run between $10,000 and $30,000 depending on condition, mileage, and originality. The market for these trucks has been rising because of their simplicity and classic appeal, but they're still affordable compared to modern pickups. The key is finding one that hasn't been neglected or rusted into oblivion. Check the frame carefully, especially if you're looking at trucks from northern states where road salt is common. Surface rust is fine, but structural rust in the frame or bed supports is a deal breaker. Parts availability for these trucks is excellent. Ford built millions of them, and the aftermarket support is massive. You can find engine parts, transmission components, suspension pieces, and body panels easily. Many parts are still being manufactured new because these trucks remain popular with classic truck enthusiasts and working vehicle owners. Stockpiling spare parts is affordable and practical. One critical advantage these trucks have over the Land Cruiser and Jeep is fuel capacity and range. Many F-Series trucks from this era came with dual fuel tanks, giving you upwards of 40 gallons of total capacity. With the fuel-efficient 300 inline six, you're looking at potential ranges of 400 miles or more on a single fill. In a bug-out scenario where gas stations are either empty or too dangerous to stop at, that range could mean the difference between reaching safety and getting stranded in hostile territory. These trucks also blend in. They look like work vehicles, farm trucks, nothing flashy or tactical that screams prepper or high-value target. In a post-collapse environment where drawing attention gets you robbed or killed, looking like every other beat-up truck on the road is a tactical advantage. You're not advertising that you have supplies, weapons, or a destination worth following you to. Now let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. EMP resistance isn't binary. It's not a matter of your vehicle either survives perfectly or becomes a total brick. There are degrees of vulnerability, and even older vehicles have some electronic components that could be affected. Alternators, voltage regulators, and electronic ignition modules all contain semiconductors that could potentially fail in a strong EMP. But here's the critical difference. These components are simple, inexpensive, and easy to replace. You can stockpile spares for a few $100s and swap them out with basic tools in under an hour. Compare that to a modern vehicle where the engine control module costs $1,500, requires proprietary software to program, and is integrated into a network of other modules that all need to communicate. If any one of those modules fails, the entire vehicle can become inoperable. And good luck finding replacement modules in a post-EMP world when supply chains are gone and every parts store has been looted. The older vehicles I've discussed don't have those dependencies. They're repairable, maintainable, and survivable. But owning the right vehicle is only half the equation. You need to prepare it properly. First, stockpile spare parts. At minimum, you want an extra alternator, voltage regulator, ignition coil, distributor cap and rotor, fuel pump if your vehicle is fuel injected, starter solenoid, and a set of spark plug wires. Store these in a metal container or Faraday cage to protect them from EMP. A simple galvanized trash can with a tight-fitting lid works fine. Line it with cardboard to insulate the parts from the metal, and you've got basic EMP protection for under $20. Second, learn how to work on your vehicle. You don't need to be a master mechanic, but you should know how to change basic components, diagnose common problems, and perform field repairs. Buy a factory service manual for your specific vehicle and actually read it. Practice repairs in your driveway now, while you have access to parts and tools, so you're not figuring it out for the first time when your life depends on it. Third, carry tools and supplies in the vehicle at all times. A basic socket set, wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, a jack, spare fluids, duct tape, zip ties, and baling wire can solve most problems you'll encounter. Add a fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and basic survival gear, and you've got a mobile platform that can keep you alive and moving. Fourth, test your vehicle regularly. Drive it on rough roads, test the four-wheel drive system, load it down with weight and see how it handles. Find its limits now so you know what it can and can't do when you need it most. An untested vehicle is a liability. You need to know if something's going to break before you're 50 miles from anywhere with no backup plan. Fifth, establish cache points along your bug-out route. Bury or hide containers with spare fuel, oil, parts, and supplies at strategic locations. If your vehicle breaks down or you need to refuel and can't find an open gas station, having pre-positioned resources can save you. Use PVC pipe with sealed caps, bury it deep enough to avoid detection, and mark the location with multiple reference points you can find even if landmarks change. The reality that most preppers refuse to face is that when an EMP hits, the majority of people will be completely immobilized. Highways will become parking lots of dead vehicles within minutes. The chaos, panic, and desperation that follow will make roads impassable and extremely dangerous. Having a vehicle that still runs won't matter if you can't get through the gridlock. This is why your bug-out plan needs to include alternate routes, off-road capability, and the willingness to abandon main roads entirely. The three vehicles I've covered, the Toyota Land Cruiser FJ62 and FJ80, the Jeep Wrangler YJ, and the Ford F-Series from 1973 to 1979, all have the off-road capability to leave pavement behind. They can handle dirt roads, forest trails, fields, and rough terrain that will stop conventional vehicles. This capability is what separates a true bug-out vehicle from a regular car that happens to run after an EMP. But capability means nothing without preparation. You need to know where you're going, have maps that don't rely on GPS, and understand the terrain between your current location and your destination. Paper maps, a compass, and the knowledge to use them aren't optional. When satellites stop working and your phone is a dead brick, old-school navigation is all you've got. You also need to consider security. A working vehicle in a post-EMP environment makes you a target. Everyone who's stranded will want what you have. You need to be able to defend yourself and your vehicle, and that means more than just carrying a gun. It means situational awareness, avoiding confrontations when possible, and being prepared to use force when necessary. Your vehicle should have minimal external markings or modifications that advertise its capabilities. Keep it looking ordinary and unremarkable. Fuel is another critical factor. Gasoline degrades over time, typically becoming unusable after 6 to 12 months without stabilizers. Diesel lasts longer, up to 2 years with proper storage. If you're serious about long-term vehicle survival, consider diesel versions of the vehicles I've mentioned, or be prepared to rotate and refresh your fuel supplies regularly. Adding fuel stabilizers extends shelf life significantly, but nothing lasts forever. In a post-collapse world, fuel becomes one of the most valuable commodities, and having a vehicle that's fuel efficient and capable of running on lower-grade fuels gives you options. The Ford 300 Inline-6 and the Toyota 1FZ FE engines are both known for being tolerant of lower octane fuels and even running on fuels that would damage more finicky modern engines. This tolerance matters when you're scavenging fuel from abandoned vehicles or trying to make use of old stored supplies. Another consideration is parts commonality. The more your vehicle shares parts with other common vehicles, the better your chances of finding replacements in the field. The Jeep YJ shares major components with the Cherokee XJ, one of the most common SUVs ever made. The Ford F-Series shares parts across multiple years and models. The Land Cruiser, while less common in the US, has a fanatical following and strong parts availability through specialty suppliers and international markets. Think beyond just the vehicle itself. What about tires? Modern radial tires have a shelf life of about 6 years before the rubber degrades. You need to stockpile tires or know where to find them. Older bias ply tires last longer in storage but give a rougher ride and wear faster. Consider carrying 2 full-size spares instead of 1, and know how to patch or plug a tire in the field. What about batteries? A dead battery is one of the most common vehicle failures, and in an EMP scenario, you might not have access to a replacement. Carry jumper cables, learn how to bump start a manual transmission vehicle, and consider carrying a portable jump starter if you can store it in a Faraday cage. Better yet, keep your battery maintained and replace it before it fails. Cooling system failures can strand you just as effectively as electrical problems. Carry extra coolant, hoses, and clamps. Know how to diagnose and repair leaks. Overheating destroys engines, and in a survival situation, you can't afford that failure. Brakes are life or death critical. Inspect them regularly, carry spare pads or shoes, and keep extra brake fluid on hand. Know how to bleed brakes and adjust them if necessary. A vehicle that can't stop safely is a death trap. These aren't glamorous topics, and they're not sexy compared to talking about guns and gear, but they're what actually keeps you alive and mobile. Most preppers fail because they focus on the wrong things. They buy the tactical accessories and ignore the fundamentals. They spend thousands on night vision but drive a vehicle that will die the moment an EMP hits. They plan for firefights but not for the mundane reality of a blown radiator hose 50 miles from nowhere. The vehicles I've discussed aren't perfect. They're old, they're crude by modern standards, and they lack the comfort and features people expect today. But they work, they survive. They keep moving when everything else stops. And in a grid-down scenario, that's all that matters. So here's what you do next. Decide which of these 3 vehicles fits your needs, budget, and geographic location. Start searching for one in good mechanical condition. Don't get distracted by cosmetic issues or minor rust. Focus on the engine, transmission, frame, and drivetrain. Get a pre-purchase inspection from a mechanic you trust if you're not confident in your own abilities. Once you own it, start the process of preparation. Stockpile parts, learn your vehicle inside and out, modify it for your specific needs, and test it thoroughly. Make it part of your regular life, not something that sits in a garage waiting for the apocalypse. Drive it, maintain it, and improve it continuously. And if you want to go deeper into vehicle preparation, parts lists, modification guides, and detailed technical information that can take your readiness to the next level, there's always more detailed information available through the link in the pinned comment. Check them out when you're ready, because the knowledge you gain now determines whether you survive or become another statistic when the lights go out. The truth is, most people won't take this seriously until it's too late. They'll keep driving their computerized vehicles, trusting that the grid will hold, and believing that someone else will solve the problem when disaster strikes. But you're not most people. You're watching this video because you understand that preparation isn't paranoia, it's responsibility. You're willing to make the hard choices and investments now so you can survive what's coming. When that EMP hits, whether from a nuclear weapon, a solar flare, or some other electromagnetic catastrophe, The difference between life and death will come down to who prepared and who didn't, who has a vehicle that works and who's stranded, who can reach safety and who's stuck in the chaos. The vehicles I've covered today, the Land Cruiser, the Jeep YJ, and the Ford F-Series, aren't just transportation. They're survival platforms that give you mobility, capability, and independence when the world falls apart. Don't just listen, act. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before it's too late. Drop a comment about which vehicle you're considering, and subscribe because there's more critical information coming that mainstream channels won't touch. The clock is ticking, and the prepared will inherit what's left. Make sure you're one of them.